Good morning. I've been asked to relate my aviation experience briefly on video. My father was Paul Frederick Eckhart. He was born in 1917. That was just 14 years after the Wright brothers' um, first flight. So I just wish that we could have recorded some of his experiences over the years. And he did tell me some stories, and maybe perhaps later I'll do another video with some of the stories that I recall. But I thought, well, wouldn't it have been wonderful if we could have done that with him? So for possible future generations, I thought I'd describe my career. And it, of course, started with my dad. He he was fascinated with flying, and he had one of his stories was about a neighbor who actually built his own airplane and needed a carburetor. Something was wrong with the carburetor he had, and so my dad took the carburetor off of his Model T Ford and put it on the airplane. The guy flew, crashed it. My dad went back to the crash site. Didn't kill the guy, but went back to the crash site, took the carburetor off, and or repossessed his carburetor so his Model T Ford would run. So he was fascinated with flying as well, which would make sense in that time. My father lived through the golden age of aviation, I think. But as I was growing up, he had a series of either being a flying cub or owned part ownership in different airplanes. So he took us flying, the whole family really. But I do recall that from a very early age. That doesn't give me any credit. But I've been exposed to aviation. It wasn't some alien thing that would never have occurred to me. When we moved to Miami, or South Miami, my dad was in a flying club for the company, Pan American. He worked for Pan American for 30, 40 years, but they had a flying club down there. And I guess it was junior high school, the beginning of junior high school, my dad said, you need to get your private pilot license. And I thought, no, I'm not Superman. I can't. I would have a hard time learning how to fly. I had a million excuses. Maybe I was just lazy. But he insisted. He said, well, once you get your private, that's good for life. So I did get it. I soloed at 16 and got my private shortly after. And then I went off to college in Tampa. Went pretty much 3 years. And I got a little disillusioned. It was sort of the time of Vietnam and all that stuff, the end of the trailing edge of Vietnam and all that. But for whatever reason, I got disillusioned. I took a regular 9 to 5 or 8 to 5 job, and met a wonderful woman, Sandy. We married, and shortly after, my dad just picked up the phone one day and said, "Hey, I've heard that the airlines will start hiring soon." Okay, so we said, well, you should get your licenses and get your commercial and your instrument rating and all of those other things, and perhaps you have an opportunity to fly for the airlines. So I started thinking, let's see, 8 to 5 every day, 5, 6 days a week, or remembering back to my dad, and he would work, he might be out for a week and be off a couple weeks, it seemed to me anyway. A lot of free time. That sounds like a great idea. I'll try that. But how am I going to afford that? He said, well, I've got some apartments that I built in Key Largo. Come live here, manage the apartments when we're going off on our summer vacation trips and stuff like that. Your wife and you can manage the apartments and get your licenses at that same flying club that I learned how to fly. This is quite a while later. I said, okay, we'll do that. So I worked full-time in retail in Key Largo, and then weekends and times I wasn't on shift, I'd go up to drive up about an hour up to Tamiami, and got my instrument rating, commercial CFI multi-engine CFI instrument rating. The place that I was getting those ratings, the school hired me as an instructor, and I instructed, and I stuck around long enough to become the chief flight instructor. Big deal. Had 3 or 4 different students or different instructors that I managed, and Cessna 150, Cessna 172, just simple airplanes like that, teaching people, some international students, but a lot of domestic students, and it was a learning experience, and I don't think I'd want to do that again. I actually considered that after I retired, but decided to do something else. But anyway, one day we were instructing. We just happened to be waiting for our students in the morning. Phone rings. One of the instructors, would pick up the phone and answer the phone because there might be a new customer, and if we can talk them into flying with me or whoever, then you get the job. It was it was sort of competitive, but in a very kind way, not in a mean, spiteful way. But anyway, this guy picks up the phone. He talks for a little bit, and he's like shaking his head, and he says, "Hey, I got this guy on the phone that wonders if anybody here likes to go sailing and fishing and likes the tropics. I can't do it because I'm getting married next month, blah, blah, blah." And I said, "Well, let me talk to him." There was nobody else around. So I talked to him. He offered me a job in Tortola, British Virgin Islands, flying a Beech 18. And he said, can we get together and do an interview? So did the interview, and he said, "Yeah, we'll fly you down there, you and your wife, and here's how much we pay, and it's a Beech 18, this blah, 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 all VFR." So I said, "Okay, I've got to talk to my wife about it, see if she's willing to move." And I talked to Sandy, and she said, she said yes, much to my surprise, which, and to my eternal gratefulness to her for considering that. So sure enough, we moved. We were just her and I. We moved down to Tortola, lived there 2 years. About 6 to 9 months after we got there, they had a Beech 18 and a DC-3. The DC-3 captain got kidney stones. Yeah, well, that disqualifies you from flying for a period of time till it's diagnosed and all this stuff. And so they're, "Oh my goodness, we got nobody. We only got one other guy to fly the DC-3. We need more than one person to fly that airplane." So they rushed me off to school, and I got my type rating, the DC-3, and for the rest of the time, pretty much it was him and I alternating flying the airplane. So that was a real gas. It was really pretty sweet. Yes, that was my first type rating on the DC-3. After just short of 2 years, it looked to me, well, two things happened. We had a son. I had a son. There, and the grandparents were like, we had my parents and her parents came down to visit, but there was some homesickness from Sandy and me, and I could see sort of the writing on the wall that this company may not last. They didn't seem to be collecting their debts, so I'm not sure what was going on. So I started searching for a job. Got a job in Naples, Florida, with a company that needed a Beech 18 pilot, and I got there, and it turned out their airplane wasn't ready yet, so I did some banner towing. Was not pleased with the sort of a bait and switch kind of thing. Got paid the same. I could have stayed there, but across the street, Provincetown Boston Airlines was hiring a sort of commuter airline kind of thing to fly the Cessna 402. So I took that job, worked there 6, 7 months perhaps. That company went bankrupt, and unemployed for a couple of months, went and lived with my parents. Sandy and I lived with parents for a little while. I think it was 3 months, and heard about Atlantic Southeast Airlines, and I started working for them, and worked there 32 years, and was retired. At Atlantic Southeast Airlines, I started out and got type ratings, and started out in the Bandit, the E-110, then the Brasilia, the E-120, then the ATR-72, then the Canadair regional jets, the 200, the 700, and the 900, and then retired on the 900. Of course, I was retired because I got to 65 age, so I started preparing. Didn't do a really great job preparing for my retirement. Financially, yes, we were fine, but as far as what am I going to do? I'm not going to just sit around the house and do nothing. That's not good. I wanted to fly. I love flying. So I got a job with Imagine Air, which was a 135 company. Of course, ASA was all 121. Provincetown Boston Airlines was a 135 carrier, and Imagine Air is a 135 carrier with SR-22s. That's that Cirrus single-engine piston, of all things, with a parachute. You might have heard of it. So I did that. That was with the passengers right there, very intimate, very close. But I really enjoyed that, with the contact with the passengers. For most of the career after 9/11, of course, we couldn't do, there was no interaction much with, or was little interaction with the passengers unless there's some kind of major problem in that. So this was a switch. The 135 world, you had close contact with them. So enjoyed that job, but 6 months later they went out of business. So then I got a call from these, I don't know how he found out about me, but called me up from Nicholas Air, said, hey, I heard your company went out of business. I said, yes. But and he said, well, if you're looking for work, I've got a job. So went to work for Nicholas Air, a Embraer product, the Phenom 300. But I managed to wangle a part-time job. So because it's part-time, wasn't upgraded to captain or get my typewriting on the airplane. But that's okay, because it's a part-time job. And that's what I'm doing right now. In fact, I'm in, or at least close to Destin, Florida right now on an overnight. I thought I'd just video this quick little, not really a resume. I'm not really looking for work. Just a historical note about my career. The Lord has been very gracious to me. Just that short period of like 2 months of unemployment, and some great experiences, some great stories. Some other time I might have to tell you some of those stories, but at this time it's just been a real blessing. And you know, I trace it back to my dad sort of giving me the old push to get your private pilot license, and then later, hey, the airlines might start hiring, so you might want to get ready for that. And so that's from where I'm coming from. So thanks for listening.